Jaycee Chan is definitely one of the most famous and appreciated actors on the planet. But if everyone knows the incorrigible Jaycee, we know very little about his family, and especially about his eldest son, Jaycee Chan. For those who know him, the latter is a little-known Chinese pop singer, who still can't break through, and who has suffered a veritable descent into hell in recent years. Between a critical and commercial fiasco and a stay in prison, Jaycee's life is at the antipodes of the one led by his famous father. But how is it that Jaycee Chan could not succeed in following in the footsteps of his father, who succeeded in everything or almost everything, and who juggles between money and success? And what kind of relationship exists between the two men? So, make yourself comfortable, that's what we're going to find out in today's video. The reason why Jaycee Chan speaks so little about his oldest son, Jaycee, is because of the tumultuous relationship that has almost always united them. And to understand why, you have to go back a bit in time to when Jaycee was still a teenager in the upscale suburbs of Los Angeles, California. The young boy was born and raised in luxury, and since he is an only child, and has star parents, it can really be said that he was greatly spoiled by them, and especially by his mother, the former Taiwanese actress Joan Lin, who married Jaycee Chan in 1983, and gave birth to their son in 1984. The young woman is thus in the care of his beloved child, to whom she cannot refuse anything, which has the gift of secretly irritating his great actor father. Jaycee Chan indeed had a very precarious childhood and had to get out of misery by his own means, working very hard and giving himself no relief. Jaycee certainly doesn't want his only son to endure the torments of destitution as he did at his age, but he does want to instill in him a sense of values and respect for work. But little Jaycee is obviously of a different temperament, since he shows from a very young age a very marked inclination for luxury and late outings with friends. The young boy's whims will become much worse when he reaches the ungrateful age of adolescence. Jaycee's passion for luxury cars and nightclubbing was a passion that he would indulge in all sorts of excesses while spending his father's money like crazy. By the way, if you like this video, don't forget to give us a like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell to receive all notifications. Let's go again. His nightlife and poor hygiene soon affected his school life, and little Jaycee ended up turning away from his studies for good. He left the prestigious College of William and Mary in Williamsburg after only 2 semesters of unjustified absences. This decision to stop his studies was very badly received by Jaycee's parents, who, like all parents, dreamed of an excellent academic career for their son. But their son didn't care, and to avoid having to listen to his mother's bullying, Jaycee decided to fly to Hong Kong, where he wanted to start a musical career. Thus, far from his parents and the control they had had over him until now, he can truly emancipate himself to find the path to fame and fortune, just like his father a few decades earlier. At least that's what he thinks. By moving to Hong Kong in 2003, Jaycee sincerely believes that he can break into cantopop, a musical genre that mixes Western pop with traditional Chinese music. He fell in love with this musical genre, which is very popular in Hong Kong, when he visited the Asian megalopolis as a child. Jaycee, therefore, composed his first cantopop album in 2004, entitled simply Jaycee, for which he himself wrote most of the lyrics. But despite the impressive marketing campaign surrounding the release of this album, it was not very well received by the public. This first failure, both with the public and commercially, will soon be followed by several other flops in Jaycee Chan's budding career. Indeed, the latter has decided to go into a film to boost his popularity with the public. This is indeed what his father did in the 1980s, since the great Jaycee Chan is also a singer who has already released 20 albums that he composed himself. Because in Hong Kong, film and music are 2 almost inseparable twin arts, and any good actor who respects himself must have very good vocal cords. But unfortunately, will not have the same cinematic success as his famous father, and most of the films he makes have not been well received by the critics. In fact, he will very rarely have the lead roles in the films in question, which doesn't really help to credit him with the audience. As the son of one of Hong Kong's most beloved stars, Jaycee may have a small amount of public sympathy from the outset, but at the same time, he has to work harder to truly earn his esteem. Before continuing, it is time to answer the question of the day, and today it is about general culture. Jaycee Chan is a singer above all, but how many albums did he produce between the beginning of his career and his decline? Is it option A, 3 albums, option B, 6 albums, or option C, 8 albums? Think carefully and write what you think is the right answer in the comments. Answer just before the end of the video. To attract the good favors of the Hong Kong and Chinese public, Jaycee even goes so far as to relinquish his American nationality in favor of Chinese citizenship. This act, which in his opinion demonstrates his high degree of patriotism, was to be enough to restore his image in Hong Kong and bring spectators to the darkened halls for his premieres. But it must be said that the romantic, dramatic and comedy registers in which the young man launches himself do not have many followers in the Chinese megalopolis. The Hong Kong people prefer kung fu films and action comedies, which was exactly the recipe for his father Jaycee Chan's success. Jaycee's feature films continue to garner critical and commercial flops. His film, Double Trouble, released in 2012, for example, only brought in $9,000 in box office receipts in Hong Kong and no more than $45,000 in the United States. His films are so bad in reality that the Chinese government had to issue a mandate requiring them to be played in only half of the country's cinemas. Despite this obligation, these turnips interest no one and almost always show disastrous box office figures. Jaycee is therefore wiping the most bitter artistic failures from all sides, despite all the support he receives from his father and his show business connections. The young man who wanted to seduce the Chinese public was finally perceived by the latter as a vulgar playboy who spent a lot of money and had no talent, except for being Jaycee Chan's son. Aware of this fact and determined to motivate his son, the latter will even go so far as to disinherit him in public. Jaycee Chan has stated that he will bequeath his money to charity rather than to his son because if he is not able to make a fortune on his own, he will only waste his own. It must also be said that the great actor had worked particularly hard for most of his life, and therefore looked unfavorably on his son's wastefulness, as he did not know the value of hard-earned money. Jaycee, on the other hand, does not see things the same way, and his attraction to festive and luxurious evenings has not diminished at all, despite his father's severe reprimands. His excessive nightlife and excessive lifestyle soon created other problems, much more serious this time, and which caused an almost insurmountable shock in the Chan family. Indeed, on August 14, 2014, Jaycee was arrested at his home by the Beijing police, alongside his friend, the Taiwanese actor Kai Ko. The two young men are charged with drug possession, and a thorough search of the apartment led the police to find more than 85 grams of marijuana. At the time of his arrest, Jaycee's whole world seems to be about to come crashing down around him, as he knows he's at great risk. The People's Republic of China has zero tolerance for drugs in an attempt to curb this scourge of society, and to effectively fight against its trafficking. The Chinese judicial system applies the heaviest punishments, even going as far as the death penalty or life imprisonment. While his friend, Taiwanese actor Kai Ko is finally released by the police after 2 weeks, Jaycee faces very serious legal charges. Jaycee Chan's son is charged, not only for possession and use of drugs but also for harboring others for the purpose of consumption. These offenses, which are very serious in China, are likely to send you straight to the firing squad, or at least to be buried alive in a squalid prison in Mongolia, where there is no hope of ever getting out. Jaycee will spend the longest and most tortuous hours of his life awaiting trial. All the more so since he cannot really count on his father, because Jaycee Chan had repeated to anyone who would listen, that he would never use his connections to lighten his son's sentence, no matter how serious it may be. Poor Jaycee's parents were actually so disappointed and upset by their son that they did not even attend his hearing. His trial began on January 9, 2015, in Beijing, after he spent the equivalent of 148 days in detention. Jaycee was finally sentenced to 6 months in prison and fined 2,000 yuan, or about $320. Compared to the maximum sentences he was facing, this sentence was providential, to say the least, especially since Jaycee had already served more than 4 months of the 6 months in question. But this did not change the fact that the conditions of imprisonment were particularly harsh, and as he had promised, Jaycee Chan did nothing to help his young son. The great actor had not called upon any of his high-ranking acquaintances to try to make his son stay in prison more clement and comfortable. After serving his full sentence and paying his fine, Jaycee was finally released on February 13, 2015, and moved to live with his mother in Taipei. Jaycee has matured significantly and has been keeping a low profile since his release from prison, far from the hectic parties and nightlife of yesteryear. He has apologized publicly and repeatedly for violating Chinese law by using drugs and setting a bad example for his audience. Jaycee's desire to return to his artistic career has been stifled forever by his incarceration, and in Hong Kong, where his career is already on the wane, no producer wants to work with him anymore. Lost by the public and professionals in the industry, Jaycee finally returns to the United States, which he probably never should have left. His absent subscriber talent and his blatant lack of charisma, at the opposite extreme from his father, did not open the way to success for him. But even though you may be the child of one of the biggest stars on the planet, you don't necessarily inherit his fame and celebrity, or his money for that matter. So, what do you think of the tragic destiny of Jaycee Chan, the son of the great and irreplaceable Jackie Chan, who obviously couldn't follow in the footsteps of his beloved father? Give us your feeling in the comments. Otherwise, for the answer to the quiz, it's the answer A, since Jaycee will have produced only 3 albums so far, very far from the 20 albums of music produced by his father, Jackie. I hope that many of you have found the answer.